Have you ever heard the term silent majority? Have you felt like you could do more? Do you have a desire to help with local politics or make a difference in how the government operates? Is it overwhelming to think about? Those questions define me. They were me, but not anymore. This podcast is about our voice, our questions, our feelings, and working together to make a difference for the future. We believe that we must fight for our liberty or lose our freedoms. Join me as I speak to our friends and neighbors, our politicians and leaders, and discover ways that we all can make a difference in the direction of the United States of America. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you're living your life driven, as I always suggest. Thank you for your comments. You know, we've had a variety of different guests on my show, business leaders, entrepreneurs, businessmen, veterans, but not a lot of politicians, which I think is kind of interesting and fun in this day and age. We've got some big elections coming up in 2022. And regardless of where you sit on the fence, you know, everybody has the opportunity to talk about their platform and who they are. And today's going to be no exception to that. And I think that it would be interesting to hear this story as it relates to where somebody was in their past life and how they got into politics and why they're doing what they're doing and hear the passion. So I've asked Jason Preston to be on the show today. You're from Utah, right, Jason?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, you know, pass through there going back and forth when I leave Montana to drive back to California. We can get an In-N-Out burger there now, so I'm happy about that. But your population is growing down there.
Yeah, I'd say it's exploding.
Yeah. I mean, the traffic as I get closer and closer to Salt Lake, it's like, wow, I might as well be in a big city in a big town.
Right. Yeah, they've had a lot of tech companies come out here, and I mean, obviously, a lot of the people leaving California looking for places where government's a little bit, in general, better.
Yeah.
Where clamping down on people's rights. And so you're seeing, people going to Texas, Nevada, and Utah is one of those spots that's really been attracting a lot of people.
Yeah. So I gravitated towards your Instagram page. Maybe it was Sean Whalen that pushed me your direction, who's out of Utah, part of the Lions Den. That's his group over there. But regardless of how I found you, I see your passion. You're running for Congress down there. And, I've had one other politician on my show, John Fuller, who's a good friend of mine up here in Montana. But I would love to hear your background, your business background, entrepreneurial background, or whatever you did in your past life before you started to run for Congress, and then what led up to this run and campaign. Because this is a massive sacrifice. I don't think people realize it. But at the same time, I think a lot of people want to get involved in politics. And again, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, this is one man's story of how he decided to do it. So please take it from there and give us some of your background.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting about me is, we're seeing a lot of people who are starting to want to get involved. And I think one of the things I love about the story here is, I mean, honestly, you could say I have no business being involved. I mean, like I didn't go through any, career politician path. I think my journey starts with, I love freedom. Like I love the principle of liberty. Like I was a kid in elementary school that the teacher came down, tried to clamp down on me. Like I would buck back. I mean, I didn't do well with authority because I valued, like my soul valued autonomy. My parents, me in control just never sat well. So yeah. I've always kind of had that love for the principles of freedom and liberty. And I'll tell you this, I was even a high school dropout. Mm-hmm. My parents were divorced when I was 12, and I went through a really rough time as a teenager. Didn't do well in school, but interestingly enough, once I was actually got into mountain biking is what actually kind of got me back on the path and helped me find my own internal drive and discipline. But when I did get into college, when it was on my terms, instead of a teacher and a school system trying to force me into a certain pathway, I mean, I crushed it. I did very well. Once it was, I was driving the process myself rather than being driven.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of loved freedom. Going into, I got my degree in secondary ed. I was going to be a teacher because I like teaching. I like the youth. There was something about me that I always liked that, helping people. But once I got out of school and started teaching, I was like, I ended up on the side. I started a bike race called the Tour of Utah, and that became my real passion. I realized as an entrepreneur, I love just to be in control of my own life. And so we built that up for a few years, an international cycling race, ended up selling that to the Miller Group in Utah. And then after that, I was like, geez, if we could do that, let's do something to make some money. So we started with some other partners. We started a dental marketing company. And we partnered with Henry Schein, which is a big Fortune 300 dental and medical distribution company. And ended up, working with, thousands of dentists across the country. But right between that time, that's when I really started getting into, if you want to call it politics. I read started reading some books by Ezra Taft Benson, who was the Secretary of Agriculture. And he really started exposing to me kind of some of the problems inside Washington. And so it was when Bush was in office. I was a huge fan of Bush until I started reading these books. And all of a sudden, by Bush's second term, I loathed the guy because I realized how corrupt the Bush family was. And so after Bush's second term, when Ron Paul ran, I don't know if you remember when Ron Paul ran against Obama, I actually brought him out to Utah and helped him campaign, or helped him raise money. Did some fundraising with him out in Utah. And that really took me to a whole new level of frustration because he actually did pretty well, but the media completely slammed it. Mm-hmm. So seeing the media and how much they distorted his campaign, at that point, once Obama got in office, I kind of almost gave up on the country because I felt like there just wasn't enough people awake. Think about it. Like during Bush and early Obama, if you started talking about corruption in Washington, about, this Constitution, like you'd get blank stares from people.
Jason, I want to ask you about that for a second because, at that time of my career, things were going great, making good money. I always knew that I cared about liberties and freedoms, and I was a Reagan fan, probably because everybody else was in my family. But, I think the majority of America felt pretty comfortable with where we were at, and we've always trusted in the system of, power of the people and the vote, and people voted for Obama, and now he's our president. And I think that's kind of where some of that blank stare comes from, because I always felt like we had faith in the systems, but yet you had already seen something different, because you said you were frustrated and you almost gave up because you saw more than the rest of us saw. How did you come to that conclusion? What was it that stood out to you? Because I think it's important to understand that now, because these things are happening again.
It's actually very relevant. I started again reading. That's the power of knowledge, right? Like it's actually interesting because I loved history. Like in college, that was like my thing. Like I loved taking history classes, loved the Cold War. But once I started reading on my own, not what the school system was giving me, but like a little bit deeper, it was like all of a sudden I realized half the things I've been learning in school were wrong. Mm-hmm. So it was like so frustrating. And so it's just reading, right? The more you read, the more you know. You're not free if you're not educated. That's why knowledge is so important. If we're not, we're only as free as we are informed. And the problem is, it's when we're comfortable, why get in and why start reading things? Why there's no reason to like really dig in and learn about frustration, because you're not frustrated. So I wasn't frustrated in my life. I don't know. I was just blessed, but I don't even remember how I stumbled upon a couple of these books, but I stumbled upon the first one. And then it was like, because I had that passion for freedom, like my spirit just woke up. And I'm a very passionate person anyways. And so like when the principles of liberty, and I started learning about that, hit me, I mean, it became an obsession, which is why, you know, like within a few years, I'm like bringing Ron Paul out here.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone was asleep. But this is the beautiful thing that relates to now. Because I've given up hope. And if you remember back then, they were talking about FEMA camps. There was a lot of really terrifying. I was actually more afraid for our country during the Bush to Obama transition than I am now.
Wow. Interesting.
Because there was nobody awake. I mean, honestly, it was like there was a very small amount of people paying attention. And it was like you had a target on your back. That was Bush had passed the Patriot Act. And it was like, when you're one of a very, like a 0.5% of people awake, that's scary. You don't have numbers on your side. Like that's an easy, you know, that's honestly, I think they had more power then. I think they kind of lost their opportunity to strike personally. Where now, but that's the beautiful thing is Obama came in and they started like hitting all, you know, the regulations, and they came down so hard on the middle class. And all of a sudden you saw people start to wake up. Because people all of a sudden weren't so comfortable. You didn't build this. I mean, you know, Obamacare hits in and all of a sudden people say, wait, something's not right. And then the most amazing thing happened is people started to say, you know, they started to read. They started to learn about the Constitution. The Tea Party movement began. And all of a sudden it was like hope began to come back because you now had a population who was educated and who cared and started fighting back. And around that time, I was living in Florida. This dental marketing company, dental branding, took us out to Florida, and we were living out there for a few years. And around that time, I actually started working during the Tea Party movement, I started working for an organization called National Write Your Congressman. And they're kind of a political watchdog organization. And their whole philosophy was the more we get business owners, which is interesting to your podcast, right? Mm-hmm. The more we're paying the bills in this country, informed, involved, and holding Congress accountable, the more that's the best way to protect the Constitution. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea because, you know, business owners, and I think that speaks to your audience, they typically understand regulations. They typically understand, you know, the implications of taxation and the free market, where a lot of people who aren't running businesses sometimes they're not paying attention to that stuff. They don't see how it impacts the country so dramatically. So I got involved in that around 2015, 2016. And it was when the IRS was starting to target conservatives. I don't know if you remember that, but the IRS was targeting conservatives. And I went and talked to this business owner about being more involved. And he said, Jason, my wife and I were very active in being, you know, against abortions. And we'd be out there, we were protesting, and we ended up getting locked up in jail.
Wow.
And he's like, Jason, it's terrifying. And then when we got out, the IRS came after us and they wiped us out financially. And he's like, tell me why I should get back in the fight. Tell me why I should be involved in it. And it was actually awesome because he's such a good guy. And I said, look, what choice do we have? Because if we don't stand up now, do you think this is going to get better or worse? I says, if we don't stand up now, that daughter that was in your wife's belly that you fought for, she's going to end up living on her knees. And so he got involved and he renewed his desire to stand and fight and hold Congress accountable, get more engaged. And what was awesome is starting Obama's second term, and this is relevant to what's coming, okay? Starting Obama's second term, enough people had woken up. And we didn't get Obama out, but it was because it was Obama versus Romney. It was two same players, the same deep state, right? Is the right hand or the left hand. But what we did do is over the next 6 years, we replaced 70% of the House and the Senate. Massive, right? That had never happened in the history of this country. It was the biggest house cleaning this country's ever seen. The Trey Gowdies, the Rand Pauls, the Mike Lees. We could go through all the people we put in. We put in some rock stars. It was a lot of Tea Party people. And we went after Obama. We shut him down. He got nothing done. We went after the IRS. They got busted for targeting people. We went after the EPA. We